Welcome to Portals of Perception and to Current Openings. What the world doesn't quite get yet. A conversation where David Price, Francis and I endeavor to swim in the current of this moment to discover what is opening. And today we are diving deeper into the Human Development Challenge by asking, what does it mean to develop? David is a journey guide and teacher, helping individuals and groups improve the quality of their lives and relationships. David, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Aviv. Great to be with you again and engaging in another current conversation.
Indeed, and episode 13. So it's a curious one because on Current Openings 12, we focused on why develop yourself. And we actually created a loom to explore this potent inquiry through 5 perspectives. So let me just, before I bring up on slide a proposal for us to build a bridging journey from why develop yourself to what does it mean to develop, anything that's alive for you to sit with us on the front end.
Well, I'm looking forward to engaging with this loom, and I'm very caught in approaching this in how we began the very first conversation where you introduced what you called the 3 sisters, and those 3 sisters being the exoteric, the mesoteric, and the esoteric. I had some inquiries from folks about those terms and what exactly those terms mean for people who come in later in the journey. So we'll get more into that today as well. But we can think of it as outer, being more the exoteric, intermediary, being the mesoteric, and the core truths of creation being more the esoteric. So in terms of what does it mean to develop, it'll be interesting to look at it through 3 different territories, 3 different dynamics. So I've certainly got that on my mind as we approach today.
Indeed, so this indeed will be one of the scaffolds we will bring into the conversation. In several ways, today may feel like we are just building a curriculum for a year-long journey. We're going to go from one starter to another starter to another starter. And that's very much the tone and the nature of Current Openings. We are looking to build many starters, to engage with inquiries as contemplative starters rather than to arrive to final destinations. And we hope people come along for the ride with us. And so let me bring what I'm proposing will be the bridging from the journey we started with, which was last time, which was why develop. So today is about what does it mean to develop.
Yes.
And what we accomplished, or explored rather than accomplished, last time was we said, let's explore the why develop yourself, not through one linear dimension. Let's bring 5 dimensions to the exploration. Let's explore the personal dimension. Let's explore the planetary perspective, the human at large, the humanity perspective, the cosmic perspective, and the future perspective. And we actually created, with each of these 5 perspectives, 3 starter points. This is the loom we created last time that we will not pause on more than just bringing it on screen. And anybody that find this provocative and intriguing, you will have the full journey of how to think about the past, present, and the future in the context of the personal perspective and everything else on episode 12. Now, what occurred was that when we came to the cosmic perspective, you integrated a very interesting question. You said, simply, how do you know that the universe loves you? In fact, how do you know that the universe and the planet love you? And what you offered as a starter to this inquiry was, well, you're alive.
Right.
You're alive.
Yep.
So, which is potent because it also creates a play on the word love and live, that are two words almost the same, just the O shapeshifts and become an I, and we understand that the vowels in the language, they represent the energetic denomination of the language. So there is a relationality in that, and inside it you said, well, how do you know you are loved? You're being given your life. You are alive. And what you then invited us into through this was, we'll recognize that the cosmic perspective and the planetary perspective is that you're being helped in so many ways. And so the human journey has about it the invitation to enter the reciprocity inquiry. Well, if I'm being cared for, if I'm being loved, if I'm being helped so much by the planet and the universe, what might be a way for me to love the planet back and to love the universe back, and to help the planet and help the universe back? And so that really invited me in the contemplation to consider what I'm offering here as a title, Dimensions of Care and Love, as the bridge from why develop to what does it mean to develop, by simply taking those 5 perspectives and inquiring in relation to each one of those, what the personal, the planetary, the human, the cosmic, the future, will take them one at a time and ask a simple question. Well, so first, the personal perspective. Well, so if you're being loved and cared for by the planet, you might as well take the lead, and the universe, you might as well take the lead of the planet and the universe and say, how can I help myself? How can you help you? And what I'm proposing, I'll bring up one at a time and I'll say something about it and then ask you, again, this is live. Nothing here is rehearsed. It's actually part of the discovery practice here, is living in the moment and inviting you, David, to see what it summons in you, what it brings up in you live in the moment. And so the starter I'm offering to how can you help you is develop the deeper natures of self-care. So obviously when you say something like this, develop the deeper natures of self-care, the first place where we will go with our minds is, well, make sure you are hydrated and that you compose the optimal diet for yourself and that you take the necessary rest and that you build a lifestyle that allows you to be in the optimal zone. And yet what I'm saying, that's pedestrian, that's foundational. Actually, it's saying it's pedestrian or foundational doesn't mean it's not profoundly important. It is profoundly important. And yet we are proposing that you can help yourself more. And so here is the bridge, why it is a bridge from why develop to what does it mean to develop, because develop the deeper natures of self-care. For example, how do you attend to the different energies that make up the idea and the potential of being a human being? So what would you say to these deeper natures of self-care?
Well, I'll try going with that exoteric, mesoteric, and esoteric, those 3 sisters. Give it a try. And one thing that I say immediately is that without the personal, the rest don't have a place to happen. So we are the temple in ourselves that allows the other four. And then if we look at the personal perspective, if we stay in the exoteric, and let's say that goes with the letter U, let's take those three vowels. You mentioned U, O, and I. And let's kind of look at putting the exoteric more with that letter U and saying, well, it's all about image. It's looking at self-care in terms of, well, how will other people perceive me? So you get people going to the gym and working out and paying attention to themselves. And what they're doing it for is because they're going to be appearing to others. And that would be more the exoteric or street level, because street level is very much about the appearance, about the image. How will I look on Instagram? How will I look on Facebook? This is the exoteric aspect. And people will put a lot of self-care into, which really would be called image care, I suppose. And that would be the exoteric level. Now, the mesoteric will start to get into wanting to do deeper research. It's not enough just to copy someone else and learn to look good. Person will start to get into, how do different foods actually work? How do I read a blood test? How do I understand more about my organs and how they're working from the inside out? Trying to get into greater understanding of anatomy, and they're getting into a deeper nature of self-care in that regard through understanding and through research. So they're paying greater attention, not only to what they look like. It's not just about how do I appear, but how's the health level of my inner lives? What's the health level of my heart and my spleen and my liver and kidneys and blood flow? Because there's a deeper attention. That would be more the mesoteric, more like functional medicine in that sense. And then the esoteric would be looking at the fact that the deeper nature of self-care then allows the higher perspectives to have a place to hold, to anchor. So therefore, the body and the temple is not only for me. It's not only self-care, but it's self-care because of how I can facilitate higher energies, higher processes through myself, and to take us where we were last time, to help the planet in the process by processing a higher level of energetic personally. So one can be in the lower dynamic, living for image and living for street cred, as it's called. One can be in the middle dynamic, which is getting more academic and researching more at brain level about the systems and how they work. And then one can have a core perspective which has in it qualities such as gratitude, awe. I mean, when just looking at the human nervous system, going beyond the academic, it's so awe-inspiring as to how the human is actually put together. So the esoteric, to my mind, comes with a feeling. It's a feeling appreciation. It's not only a mental appreciation. So we could go from body being more the direct exoteric image, moving to mental appreciation, and then moving to mental, emotional, and physical appreciation, which would get us more into the esoteric, getting more into the deeper, the purpose of the human and why we would want to have self-care to maintain our human purpose, with a journey of discovery into what that is. So that's kind of a lot packed into the first one, but it seems like potentially a very important starting point.
Yeah, beautiful, David, because you also there already in how you framed esoteric, you are beginning to frame already the next layer here, which is how do you help the planet? And in several ways, you started to offer the entry into that. And so the starter we are proposing here is that, again, the way to help the planet is to develop the elements that enhance the planetary human reciprocity of care and love. And you could probably take a similar exoteric, mesoteric, esoteric evaluation. And in the first place, care in the exoteric, and this will prove the point that exoteric is important. It's not to say that the exoteric is not important. Well, so in the first place, you just don't leave your trash outside. Take care of your trash by yourself, and don't destroy the environment around you. That would be pretty obvious. How would you develop this idea of enhancing the planetary human reciprocity of care and love more into the mesoteric and esoteric dimensions?
In the mesoteric, I would start with the level of its research and understanding. So, and why that is significant is the exoteric tends to take things for granted and work by instruction. So the instruction to use what in Canada is called the blue box program, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. So it's an instruction. And then if people don't follow the instruction, the neighbors will look at them like, why aren't you following the instructions? So it runs at the level of conformity. The mesoteric starts to get into, well, do I understand even how the planet works? Do I understand the planet's place in creation? Looking at a book on the cosmos and looking at the planet's place in the solar system, and trying to understand about weather patterns. I call it the journey from ego to geo. So ego is the same letters, very personally based, but geo, same letters, different order. It's the beginning of words like geography, geomancy, geodetics. This is to do with a core name for the planet. So we start to shift from just looking from our own personal perspective at exoteric level, and even looking at ourselves at mesoteric level to saying, well, is the planet alive? How is the planet alive? Why has the planet got so many different kinds of organic life? How come over 90% are already extinct according to science? We start getting into the science of it. Does the planet have an energy field? Well, clearly the planet does. Does the planet have gender? Are we living on a he or a she? And we tend to talk about the planet as she, planet Earth, which really, if we look at it more accurately, it would be planet water, because 2/3 of the surface of the so-called Earth is covered in water. But calling her planet Earth makes us feel more secure. We wouldn't feel so secure if we called it planet water. And then we go to the esoteric, and then we're looking at what can we provide as a human being that is different, that is special, that the planet needs. And what I've come to in that, and we've spoken about this previously, is that the human being has a choice. We can choose to process different kinds of energies. So we have 5 fundamental processes that we all engage in. 8 billion humans need. We need to have physical food. We need to have liquid food. We need to have gaseous food, that's air. We need to have light. And we also process energy according to what we think and feel. So if we can bring in, let's take the energies there of care and love, and realize these are not words, these are words that describe a something. So if we can become a transmitter of love into the planetary ecology, then we bring an enhancement to the energetics of the planet. So we help the planet by our attitude in that sense, and by the qualities. I think quality is a key word. What are the qualities that live with us, that we actually then emanate from ourselves into the astral worlds, or the energy worlds, or the atmosphere of the planet, and also to other people? And so there's a big difference between a person who is processing those energies of feeling love, and a person who, for whatever reason, is anchored in toxicity by their process. They're producing something which is of a lower frequency, and the planet may be helped with high frequency fuels, high frequency qualities. That would be more of an esoteric view, going from care to core. More of an esoteric view. Yeah.
And you already there, once again, seeding all the next layers of the loom by framing those deeper dimensions of truly becoming an anchor, an embodied anchor, a transmitter of care and love. And so what we're doing here, we are answering both questions. We're deepening the inquiry about why develop yourself, and we are beginning to answer and offer some layers of dimensions of contemplation into what does it mean to develop, which leads us to the humanity, the human perspective. How can you help humanity? And the starter I'm offering here is, well, you develop yourself. So again, what does it mean to develop? Well, you develop yourself to inspire in others the ways of caring for and loving the human cause. That's the recognition that the myth of the selfish gene that became very popularized in the middle of the 20th century is a myth. We actually know that the reason we came into the supreme position that we found ourselves in as a species on the planet is because the selection is not purely by the selfish gene. There is actually a collaborative dimension. There is competitive and collaborative dimension. What's unique about Homo sapiens was that we were competitive inside collaborative communities. So if you take it just down the line of evolutionary biology, those evolutionary scaffolds are there earlier on. And this is not about merely playing it nice, but this is actually what is efficient and effective for the transmission of the highest possibility and the survival, let alone the unlocking of the greater human potential. What would you say about inspiring in others the ways of caring for and loving the human cause?
I take that dynamic of the so-called selfish gene and say that is the aberration in human history. That is not the mainstream of human history. Like if you take a Native American tribe, let's say, or if you take any tribal society, Scotland, Wales, all over the planet where there's endemic tribal peoples, they're working, as you said, in a cooperative manner. And there's sporting competition, but that's very different to wanting to take over. So if somebody was highly selfish in one of those tribes and tried to corner the market in something, as an example, they would actually be excluded from the tribe. So I was pondering about this week. I was looking at the word generous and being generous. And as you know, I like to shape shift words and take the inner component of a word and rearrange it and see what's there, because that was a science. In medieval times, that counted as a science. People were even paid to do that. In the French court, they had a professional anagrammer who would be anagramming the names of people coming to visit the king to find out their inner qualities. It's very fascinating. They believed that every letter had an energy with it. So I was looking at the word generous, and curious enough, it says our genes, which is actually exactly what you said about genetics. So our natural way, I think, is to be generous, which is our genes. We're actually designed to be caring, to be sharing, to be looking out for our neighbor, to be looking out for other people, not in a communistic fashion, to take that out of the way. This isn't about communism, capitalism, which is a binary system. This is looking at the inner core design of the human and having a human perspective on how we can help humanity. And at the core of that, to me, sits this idea of generosity, which comes from being stable in oneself and strong in oneself from the personal perspective, having a good sense of who one is and why one is here, that the universe wants us to be here, and to realize that we are of kind, or even a stronger expression, we are kin. We're of kin to the rest of the human race. We're actually one tribe. with different frequencies, flavors, denominations. So the idea of, I'll go back to my home country, Britain, the idea of a Welshman having a quarrel with a Scotsman because one's Welsh and one's Scottish makes absolutely no sense, because that's rooted in territorial perspective. Whereas the higher human perspective would be, how can we help each other live in a harmonious way with the planet, going to the planetary perspective, and then have a harmonious personal life within that. We're actually looking at the bigger picture rather than the selfish gene idea where what is that bumper sticker used to say? He who dies with the most toys wins. Right? Which is absolutely the exoteric at personal level with minimal intelligence.
Indeed, indeed. And the beauty and the power of this insight about generosity and generous as our genes is that actually when we engage in the practice of generosity and when we study the science of gratitude and generosity, we see that it's the most efficient and effective way to help ourselves, to help the planet, and to help the human cause. And again, at a different time, we would come and spend a full hour about the art and science of generosity and what that means at different levels. So what we are discovering and developing here has its hologramic nature, because we could just stay with this one idea and explore generosity at the personal, at a planetary, at a human, at the cosmic, and the future perspectives. And this is why these perspectives, they are interpenetrating and hologramically co-emerging through each other. Now, so when we bring the cosmic perspective and we ask, how can you help the universe? In some way, you have already just answered that in some of what you started. The position we take, the invitation we make is, well, you develop yourself. By actually developing yourself, I could stop the sentence there. You are helping the universe, you're helping humanity, you're helping the planet, you're helping yourself by developing yourself, period. However, I'm offering the specificity of develop yourself as an agent of evolution and develop yourself as an agent of the evolution of the universe in human and planetary affairs. When you do that, when you become, as you said earlier, the active, living, embodied transmission of care and love and generosity, it's not just that it's smart strategy to build happy life and happy neighborhood, even though that is an important element of it. You're actually, in what you offered earlier, you're actually tethering yourself, which is me seeding something we will get to later. You're beginning to put yourself on the frequency nature, on the wavelength of what enables you to be more of an evolutionary agent, because you are becoming a place, a vehicle through which the fountain of life can express itself. Life is the fountain of care and love and generosity. So when we say, oh, it's a smart idea for me as a human to sense and breathe into and embrace care and love and generosity, we are merely saying, yeah, what that means is you're becoming more fully available, more open, more of a ready conduit for life to play through you in full.
Yes.
What would you say to this idea of agent of the evolution of the universe?
Yeah, first to say that's beautifully expressed. What I'd say is an odd starting point, but what turned up in me is humans are contagious. We are contagious. What we think, what we feel, the energies that we bring into ourselves and transmit are contagious. So if someone is actually has a deep depression, let's start there, in themselves, and they're feeling pressed down upon, which is that word depress ion, they're being pressed down upon by certain kinds of energy, and it's making them shoulders slump and they're heavy on their feet. That energy can easily transmit to another person, and they start to feel a bit down. We have talk these days about watch out for negative people. Well, I would write it, differently, and I would look at the fact that all of us are contagious, and we all of us send out from ourselves what energy is going on in us at that moment. So if we're able to be back to the human perspective a moment, that aspect of inspiration, so inspiring others. Well, if we're inspired in ourselves, we can transmit inspiration, and other people pick up some of that and may also become inspired. We know this when I remember at school, which classes does a person remember from schooling? Usually the classes where the teacher had a passion, where the teacher was inspired, because some of that gets across. And I love that word passion because it says pass ion. And as we've said before, an ion, if we look it up in the dictionary, it says a positively or charged particle. It's energetic. So evolute ion, what's that? We're talking about an energy charge that is actually lifting or raising the level of vibration of the individual, of the planet, of the human. And where does that come from? It comes from the cosmos. So we're becoming a cosmic agent, and actually transmitting a higher energetic frequency. And that is more contagious, I would put forward, is more contagious than an energy such as depression. We actually can bring in the energies of evolute ion. And here's an interesting thought on that. Maybe we go from development into envelopment. We become enveloped, or to put the word with the way we use it, we become like an envelope. And what's an envelope? An envelope is something that contains a message, and then you send it in the mail, right? It's an envelope. So when we become enveloped, or in a way adopted by certain higher energy frequencies, we become a transmitter of care, of patience, of love, of devotion. And other people catch that from us. Or if we meet someone who has those energies, we catch those energies from them. And so we help raise the level of vibration of the human race in an evolutionary direction. We get away from the sort of the barbaric energies such as warfare and the low end of the toxic end of energetics, and we start to radiate these higher frequencies, which is very practical. It's not foo-foo or woo-woo stuff, as is sometimes said. It's very grounded, it's very practical, and it's very real, because we know that energies are contagious. So if you're in a room full of happy people, you'll tend to pick up a bit of happy. If you're in a room full of not so happy people, you tend to pick up a bit of that. So we can become, by self-choice, we can actually choose to be a champion of higher energetic process. I sometimes call it being a champion of empathy, or a champion of generosity, or a champion of love. We decide to champion that into the human race and into the energies of the planet.
And to bring into it again the exoteric, mesoteric, esoteric, it begins by appreciating this conceptually, actually waking up to this awareness, entertaining, playing with these ideas in the first place, considering these options, and then beginning to go deeper into appreciating those by abiding with some of these considerations, all the way to choosing to evoke feelings, deeper feelings about those realms you are pointing to as we become agents of the evolution of the universe in human and planetary affairs. And by the way, the court anagramma that you talked about before will point us to the realization that evolution says you love it on. the letter U, love it on, which means when we engage with the evolutionary process, there is about it a process and an opportunity to participate, not just in the reproduction of the automated repeat of what was, but that actually the transmission of life, the fountain of life, has about it always this dual transmission. It wants to continue itself to guarantee that what has been accomplished has progression into the next cycle, the next generation. And there is that secondary impulse, which is it always seeks to improve conditions, to improve potential, to improve opportunities, which is part of the evolutionary propulsion, which brings us to indeed the future perspective. And here again we ask a simple question: how can you help the future? And similarly, we propose that by developing yourself, I could end the line there. How can you help the future? By developing yourself. So one reason as to why develop you is to help the future, to help the universe, to help the humanity at large, to help the planet, and to help yourself. When you develop, you help all those dimensions. Specifically about the future, we are inviting the starter contemplation through the idea of develop yourself to become a conduit for a bright future. One that's filled, or you could say for bright futures, not only one, but multiple bright futures. Futures that are filled with regenerative care and love. So there is an aspect here of the regenerative nature, and that it's not simply a recent Western American ethos of wanting for our children to have a better future. It's truly what we experience as parents and teachers and counselors in terms of the natural impulse of life. Life wants to have its improved, regenerative, brighter opportunity, which we inhabit that sentiment, that expression of life by experiencing it in the most personal way, and also in the broadest human way. You don't have to have your own children to want for next generations to be wiser, brighter, healthier, more peaceful, more prosperous not just in the material sense, but prosperous in the capacity to create new art and new beauty and new expressions. Be the portals for all that life can be as the universe continues to release its potential through and in planetary and human affairs.
Yes.
Anything you'd want to say here? This entire piece was so far the bridging to what does it mean to develop. We're about to bring. I said in the beginning, this will feel like a curriculum for a year-long journey, because literally, David, we could stay, and we may come back in the future and say, take a full episode to how can you help humanity, or how can you help the universe? And what we are now just seeding, we may choose to go deeper into. We are in this phase of the greater development challenge, and what presents itself is this approach of looms of dimensions of that inquiry. So before we transition out of this starter bridging loom to bring the next loom about what does it mean to develop, anything you'd say in the summation of these 5 perspectives through the lens of help, the permanent line of help, the permanent line of care, the permanent line of love?
Yeah, I think a crucial perspective, which is connected to why why there would be current openings, and why it would be called current openings, what the world doesn't quite get yet, is the idea that the future is not simply us continuing on from the past and writing ourselves into it. It's the idea that there are currents of energy from the universe, from the cosmos, coming through into the planet, and that the human, and this is a term I've really been working with the last week, we are co-respondents. So that is like, you get your correspondent from America, or correspondent from Israel, or correspondent from Britain, or wherever, a co-respondent. We're co-respondent to the cosmos. So the human is not actually capable of causing something new. It appears like it's new, but it's mixing what's already here. So I sometimes look at human civilization, the physical of it, and think, wow, looks like what we've done is taken what's under the planet and put it on top. Cars, houses, buildings, concrete. We think we've created something, but it's all working with what's already here. We don't actually create anything from scratch. And we are co-respondent, and we understand that at physical level. But what we don't tend to get is that we are influenced by energies coming in from the universe. Now, clearly, this is what astrologers and the magi and people who studied the heavens have been onto this for thousands of years, trying to get that correspondence. And the idea that, well, if Mars is stronger this week, then that's going to have an impact. This is the local planets, but there's what's happening, like the Mayan people tried to indicate to us that there's something happening importantly around 2012 to 2032, because we're lining up with what they called the dark cleft of the Milky Way, also what we call the galactic center. So, and they're saying energy is coming in and we respond to that energy, but we're not going to be able to respond if we're stuffed with what we've already been doing, if we're preoccupied. So I think part of the future perspective is having a certain degree of humility that goes with humanity, which is that we didn't make the universe. We're co-respondent in the universe. We didn't even make ourselves. We wouldn't know how to make a nervous system or a blood system or a brain. We couldn't make a tree, right? So we're co-respondent, and there still are fresh energies coming in every day. And we could call those energies the future. So it's to become people of the future. I call it trying to process tomorrow's energies today. It's like trying to position oneself into what is futuristic, which really means positioning oneself to be able to receive. So it struck me, portals of perception could almost be portals of reception. Then you add a P, and you go from reception to perception, because you bring your own power to it. But I think that feature of being correspondence. And what do we want to be correspondence with? Do we want to be correspondence with energies from 1914 that were at play in the First World War? Do we want to be correspondence with ancient Rome and be lining up for the Senate? Or do we want to be correspondence for a future signal that is to do with, as you say there, a bright future that's filled with regenerative care and love, which is absolutely our option. We can do that.
And so the cosmology of becoming caretakers, because that's a sentiment you're really inviting us into. Right. The idea that as caretakers, we become caretakers of all the plenty that's here. And also, by definition, we become caretakers of all that becomes available through us for future generations. The toddlers to experience this beautiful planet 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, if we did not blow this place up. So there is a weight of responsibility and appreciative awareness that accompanies this idea of becoming caretakers. So when we talk about dimensions of care and love, the invitation is to become caretakers to ourselves, caretakers to the planet, for the planet, caretakers for humanity at large in the way we simply, the choices we make every day, caretakers for the opportunity of the universe at large in this unique place we call Earth, and therefore caretakers of future generations through the living choices and the kind of embodied choices we express every day. And that then presents an invitation for us to further the inquiry into what does it mean to develop. So in many ways, we could have stopped this episode here and do the next episode as a separate episode. We might choose editorially to do so. However, for now, we're going to proceed into this as one conversation and simply say that all that was a bridging from why develop yourself to what does it mean to develop. So this is a mid-flight update, because what occurred was that as David and I, as we recorded episode 13, this entire piece that we are describing and narrating that we will go into took us a whole other 45 minutes. And we decided to break it into 2 episodes. So you'll have to come back to watch current openings 14 to discover the completion of the contemplative loom that opens 5 dimensions in response to the inquiry, what does it mean to develop? What is it that people can expect to discover when they come back to?
Well, that would be, as they say, that would be telling. So so you think of it like one of the old cinema shows where, you know, just where the car is on the edge of the cliff, and then you go away and then you come back the following. I used to go to Saturday Club as a lad, and you come out the following week and somehow the cars come back from the cliff, but then you get to watch what happens next. That's why they call it a cliffhanger.
All right, so we're going to leave you with a cliffhanger. Come back, watch current openings 14 to further explore this potent inquiry of what does it mean to develop.
There was so much in it that, as Aviv said, it could easily become a one-year course. And there are many, many details within it that we'll take on and deepen. But we thought too much for one episode because it's an hour and a half. So we thought, let's take it and separate it into 2 parts. So that's what we've done.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Aviv.
Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.